Have you ever been stabbed in the back by the very corporate boss you trusted and served with absolute loyalty? You poured your entire heart and soul without holding back a single drop of strength into rescuing a dying company on the brink of bankruptcy. You even threw away your own dignity, begging clients on your knees just to give your company one last chance to stay alive. But what happens after the company miraculously survives, scales up, and starts raking in millions under the irrigation of your raw blood and sweat? You don't get the promotion or the raise your boss promised you over drinks, nor do you receive a shred of the honor you earned. Instead, your boss's utterly incompetent relatives shamelessly march in, taking over the executive director position that rightfully belonged to you. You look around in shock, realizing that the very colleagues who showered you with praise and called you brother yesterday are avoiding your eyes today. In the dark corners of the office break room, they are whispering in cold, vicious tones about the termination paper the HR department has already drafted for you. This suffocating sense of merciless betrayal by a boss to whom you dedicated your entire life is nothing new in the greedy history of mankind. Today, the past life soul we are peeling back belongs to none other than Joan of Arc. Compared to her ordeal, the workplace betrayal you experience fades into insignificance. Her agony was millions of times more intense. At just 13 years old, she began receiving divine messages in the depths of her soul.
The oracle commanded her to put on armor, drive the brutal English entirely out of France, and personally escort that disinherited, discarded Prince Charles VII to his coronation. She endured in silence until she was 16 before taking her first step. Completely alone, she went to the nearest local military commander, Robert de Baudricourt, proclaiming with the purest conviction the divine mission entrusted to her by God. But in return, she received nothing but merciless mockery, humiliation, and outright rejection from this group of powerful men holding military keys. The following year, destiny erupted into an astonishing twist. Joan precisely predicted a historical massacre hundreds of miles away, where the French army would be completely slaughtered by the English at the Battle of the Herrings. This unbelievable prophecy shattered the commander's deep-rooted arrogance, finally forcing him to grant her an escort to see Prince Charles VII. Yet this path of salvation was crawling with the filthy deceptions of mortal men. The prince did not believe her blindly. He orchestrated a cunning trap in his court, dressing a decoy in royal garments to play a fake prince. To his shock, Joan, who had never seen a king and could not read a single word, stepped into the grand hall and instantly pulled the real Charles VII out of the dense crowd where he was hiding, tearing down the royal family's self-righteous deception on the spot. Subsequently, she was subjected to even more humiliating bureaucratic examinations. She was forced to strip bare to pass a ruthless virginity inspection by Queen Yolande.
She was then pushed before the Inquisitions of Poitiers, where a council of self-righteous theologians and clerics spent weeks interrogating her soul and morals like a magnifying glass. Only when these hypocritical establishment elites confirmed that there was not a single trace of demonic corruption in her, only the purest goodness, humility, purity, and piety, did they have to admit that a divine miracle had indeed arrived. Entrusted with military command, she stood at the absolute front line, sweeping across battlefields and forging an unstoppable campaign that stunned all of Europe. AD 1428. When you open your eyes again, the freezing north wind scrapes across your face. You find yourself a 16-year-old illiterate peasant shepherd girl, standing entirely alone in a desolate wasteland, torn apart by a century of the 100 Years' War, surrounded by heaps of rotting bones. Right now, your great French empire is completely paralyzed under an entire century of pitch-black, brutal military defeats. The whole society is trapped in the deepest, most suffocating sense of national learned helplessness. Your inherited monarch is fleeing in cowardice, and corrupt nobles are waging filthy internal wars using the blood of their own countrymen. From elite generals to bottom-tier peasants, everyone is waiting for death, numbly believing that any form of resistance is nothing but a futile struggle. But at 13 years old, inside the pitch-black forest where you wandered to find a lost lamb, a brilliant, blinding beam of divine light shattered the darkness. The roaring voices of archangels and saints boomed inside your eardrums. That oracle gave you a mission so insane that ordinary men would brand you a lunatic. You, a mere peasant, must drive the iron armies of England completely out of France and personally escort that disinherited, discarded Prince Charles VII through enemy lines to be crowned at the Reims Cathedral. For 3 whole years, you wrestled with this mad prophecy in absolute self-doubt and paralyzing fear. It wasn't until those terrifying reminders jumped into your dreams every single night, whipping your very soul, that you finally gathered the burning courage to act. You moved. You sought out the nearest local garrison commander, Baudricourt, declaring the holy mission God commanded you to fulfill. The officers burst into ear-piercing laughter, slamming the door on your face with the vulgar language of soldiers. Not until the following year, when your vision of the French army suffering a humiliating, castrating defeat at the Battle of the Herrings became bloody reality, did the commander fall to his knees in sheer terror, finally granting you a small escort to cross enemy territory and face the prince. Yet Prince Charles VII did not offer you a single grain of trust. Inside the court, he dressed in plain clothes to hide among his servants, putting a decoy on the throne to mock you. To their absolute horror, you stepped into the grand hall and within 1,000th of a second used a predatory, raw instinct to lock eyes with the real Charles VII, tearing down the deception on the spot. Pushed into a humiliating virginity exam by Queen Yolande and dragged before the elite theologians of Poitiers, only when they confirmed there was not a single shadow of demonic taint did the gates of the establishment finally open for you. You were authorized to don your silver plate armor, raising your holy banner as you charged onto fields of flying flesh and blood. You never cowered behind seasoned generals. You always stood at the absolute front, the first to lift the banner against the enemy's blades.
Your near-miraculous myth of battlefield immortality acted like a massive dose of adrenaline, instantly reigniting the dead morale of the French forces. During a savage siege, an English arrow slammed directly through your armor into your neck and shoulder. Yet you simply gritted your teeth against the agonizing pain, ripping the iron arrow straight out of your own bleeding flesh, and your terrifying wound miraculously healed under the blazing fires of your absolute conviction. To escape enemy capture, you even threw yourself off a dizzying, freezing tower 21 meters high. From an altitude where death was a mathematical certainty for any mortal, you landed without breaking a single bone, brushing off the dust to fight another day. In tactical meetings, you crushed all bureaucratic opposition, flatly rejecting the cowardly defensive doctrines of the generals. You concentrated France's artillery fire to launch a savage front-faced assault on the strongest English forts. You achieved the ultimate miracle of defeating a superior force, clearing the 6-month siege of Orléans in just 4 brutal days of warfare. During the subsequent Battle of Patay, you launched a lightning strike like the Grim Reaper himself. The elite English longbowmen, who had terrorized French armies for a century, were utterly crushed under your iron cavalry before they could even prepare their defensive formations. You pursued the enemy relentlessly, marching Prince Charles VII through vast, dangerous enemy lines, finally stepping into the historical sanctuary of French monarchs, the Reims Cathedral. At that precise moment, the cathedral bells rang out for you. With your lone peasant frame, you successfully elevated a filthy royal succession dispute into a holy, supreme war for the very survival of the French nation. When the holy oil was slowly anointed onto Charles VII's forehead, officially giving him absolute legitimacy over France, the cathedral erupted into thunderous roars of celebration. Covered in battlefield blood and grime, you stood beside his throne, holding your tattered banner, tears streaming down your face. In that moment, you wept like a child, innocently believing this treasured nation was finally redeemed. You told yourself that half your mission was complete. Once the last of the English were driven out, you could happily return to your village to tend sheep and report back to God. But here, the coldest, most suffocating first reversal explodes at the absolute peak of your glory. The gears of history never move as simply as you think. The exact millisecond Charles VII took over the treasury post-coronation, he stared at empty ledger books.
He realized in despair that the French forces had no funds left to sustain a large-scale campaign. This weak monarch, whom you personally reunited and carried to the throne on your back, now desperately wanted to end the war, even if it meant bowing down to beg the English for peace. When you stood in council meetings, burning with passion to launch a final assault to liberate the capital of Paris, the king and his jealous politicians made their move. Terrified that your massive prestige among the lower-class peasants would utterly eclipse their corrupt royal authority, they deliberately sabotaged your campaign. Behind your back, they systematically reassigned your elite troops and severed your logistical supplies, utilizing the filthiest political schemes to collapse your potentially historic Paris offensive.
In May 1430, during a brutal rearguard defense at Compiègne, the absolute ugliness of human nature reached its apex. On one side stood a dense wave of Burgundian mercenaries rushing to tear you limb from limb. On the other, your panicking, selfish teammates huddled atop the ramparts. In sheer hysteria, these cowards prematurely shut the heavy iron city gates right in your face, trapping you and your die-hard personal guard outside the freezing stone walls. You were violently dragged from your horse saddle by dozens of filthy hands, reduced to a prisoner of a brutal enemy. You were locked inside a bleak, terrifying fortress tower for an entire year as a trophy of war. For 365 grueling nights, you gripped the iron bars of your window, staring at the edge of the horizon, waiting with your last breath for the king you crowned with your own flesh to arrive with your ransom. But the result? Charles VII watched coldly from afar, refusing to pay a single copper coin for your life. In that freezing darkness, you finally saw reality clearly. You were not captured due to tactical failure. You were legally terminated via the most shameless bridge-burning scheme by the very Charles VII you raised to the status of king. Like a piece of livestock, you were bartered off by those greedy Burgundians to the English who hated you to the bone and wanted to rip you to shreds. You were thrown into a pitch-black, insect-infested bureaucratic panopticon inside Rouen Castle. A rigged religious tribunal, carefully orchestrated by a pro-English bishop, became the ultimate political engine to strangle your soul. 50 of the most elite, learned theologians and law doctors in Europe lined up, staring down at you, a completely illiterate, physically broken peasant girl.
For months, they subjected you to a campaign of absolute psychological warfare, desperately trying to prove your divine oracles were demonic illusions of Satan. They laid a treacherous theological trap that even archbishops could not navigate, demanding, "Are you certain you are in God's grace?" A deadly snare. Answering yes or no would instantly convict you as a heretic to be burned alive. Yet, your brilliant, unblemished mind slapped these establishment elites across the face in the nick of time. You answered fearlessly, "If I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may God so keep me." The inquisitors exploded into a collective humiliated rage at your flawless purity. Ultimately, this patriarchal council holding the monopoly on speech could only target your clothing. Under a corrupt religious system built entirely on male supremacy, they ruled that your insistence on wearing protective men's campaigning gear was an unforgivable violation of divine laws and absolute proof of witchcraft. They branded you a witch and dragged you to the execution stake. On the morning of May 30th, 1431, the old marketplace of Rouen was turned into a theatrical carnival of death, packed with mocking crowds. Tied tightly to a towering stake, as the aggressive, cruel flames mixed with heavy black smoke began to ruthlessly tear and consume your flesh, you did not scream in demonic terror. Amid unimaginable, absolute agony, you spent the final fraction of your soul's strength crying out the name of Christ 6 times, her voice ringing powerfully across the square until your very last breath. And right here, a second bone-chilling reversal explodes, destined to give everyone present lifelong nightmares. When the 4-hour inferno finally settled into silent pitch-black charcoal, the executioner Geoffroy Tirage stepped forward to clear the ashes. The exact millisecond he saw the truth, he let out a blood-curdling scream of pure terror. Your tortured heart, which had survived the ultimate betrayal of mankind, remained completely untouched by the fire. Inside that black abyss of soot, it lay glowing with a miraculous deep crimson three-dimensional light. In that split second, the executioner Joffrey was entirely shattered by fear and regret from the depths of his soul. Knowing he had committed an astronomical sin, he fled to a monastery shortly after, spending the rest of his life in silent penance. Countless Catholic clerics and arrogant English soldiers fell to their knees, weeping bitterly as they cried, "My God, we have burned a saint alive!" Terrified, the English commander screamed hysterically, "Quick, throw this unburnable heart into the Seine River," desperate to erase all evidence of the miracle. Historical records leave an even savager blueprint of their fear. The English army literally ordered the executioner to rebuild the fire and burn your remains 2 or 3 times over. They were shaking with terror, paralyzed by the thought that a single fragment of your bone might be salvaged by the French as a holy relic, which would reignite that terrifying, unstoppable resistance morale. The war you ignited raged on for 22 years after your death. That weak, self-absorbed King Charles VII comfortably enjoyed the throne you bought with your life, while packaging your tragedy into a neat, pure spiritual token. Yet, the French military sustained that exact death-defying momentum you carved into them. No longer retreating, they completely cut the proud English army to pieces in 1453, expelling them permanently from French soil.
And what became of the Kingdom of England, which burned a saint and thought it had won? They gained absolutely nothing from this 100-year conflict. Driven to absolute financial rupture and spiritual bankruptcy, they imploded shortly after into a decades-long domestic slaughterhouse over political spoils, the Wars of the Roses. The pendulum of cosmic debt always swings back. The heavens spare no one. If you were God holding the cosmic scales, looking at this magnificent soul who ignited hope in the absolute heart of darkness, only to be swallowed alive by politicians and establishments, how would you arrange Joan's next life? Would you let her reincarnate as the most ordinary, simple peasant country girl, granting her a peaceful, disease-free life where she works with the sunrise and rests with the sunset? Though life remains hard, her world would be entirely devoid of battlefield blood and terror. Though poor, her dinner table would always provide enough bread for a quiet pre-meal prayer, letting her navigate a silent, low-key existence wrapped in domestic warmth, never again facing cold-blooded betrayal after sacrificing everything. Or would you choose to birth her into a hyper-wealthy, astronomical modern billionaire dynasty, encoding a new divine oracle deep inside her soul, letting her grow up to deploy the immense power of cutting-edge technology and massive global capital to once again act as a historic titan, reshaping the global paradigm? In this 2026 landscape of information overload and algorithmic dominance, we have seen far too many teenage girls blow up overnight across digital screens.
Look at the climate activist who screamed slogans, only for her movement to be commercialized by capital into a farcical political theater. Look at the 12-year-old prodigies coding their way to becoming Silicon Valley CEOs, acquiring obscene wealth before adulthood. Yet, in this calculated, clinical era, replicating an icon like Joan of Arc, who shook and shaped entire generations through nothing but raw faith and unyielding conviction, is becoming mathematically impossible. True, in the Middle Ages, lacking advanced technology, a bottom-tier civilian attempting to become a household legend was almost impossible. Yet, back then, resources were scarce, meaning the elite circle of actual decision-makers was tiny. If you could shock a handful of ministers and the king with a miracle, the probability of reversing your fate was immense. But look at modern society. To succeed, you must appease a multifaceted matrix of conflicting interest groups. Depending on the arena you target, the hidden arrows in the dark become impossible to dodge. Even if you cross mountains of fire to become president, regardless of whether your actions are right or wrong, nearly half of the population will stand on their respective ideological lines to relentlessly tear you down and smear your name. Every era breeds its own unique cage and suffocating parameters. When you sit in your current life, feeling sold out by your boss, abandoned by the establishment, and compressed to the brink of collapse by reality, perhaps you should stop. Think about this past life of Joan of Arc. Think about why her story, after 600 years of fire, ash, and structural betrayal, still effortlessly echoes across time to find you today. Perhaps, in your endless midnight, you too can uncover that single oracle God left specifically for your soul. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If she were to reincarnate into the modern world, would it be a blessing for her soul or an even more tangled nightmare? Your every subscription, like, save, and comment is the lifeblood helping WTF Past Lives survive inside these clinical algorithms and continue producing premium archives. We will see you in the next file. Bye-bye.
Hey, still here? Enjoying the despair of your past life, aren't you? Did that past life make you shout WTF inside? If yes, welcome back. You've regained your memory. Trust me, you are so much happier now. Since you survived, support this down-and-out angel. Like and subscribe to keep the updates flowing. It won't send you to heaven, but it lets me stay here with you in hell. See ya.